Welcome back, guys. So we need to continue with our checklist for preparing for an ocean crossing. Let's get into number 5. Navigation and communication. I'll just tell you what I'm using, and I think it's fairly typical of what people use these days. I'm using a Raymarine chart plotter. Obviously it's one of the big brands. There's B&G and there's Garmin, etc. They all do the similar thing, and there's only about 2 or 3 or 4 chart options, electronic chart options you can use. Navionics is a big one, and CMAP is another one. Now the big question is, do you rely on electronic navigation only, or do you need paper charts as well? It's been many years since I've bought a paper chart. However, I collect them. I still carry them. Most of mine are actually photocopies that I've picked up from decades ago, and all I really use for navigating for the paper chart is a small scale. Like, I'm talking about a chart that covers an entire ocean, and then once a day I'll plot, it's usually noon, I'll plot my noon position with a pencil and a ruler on the paper chart. If I lose all electronics, at least I have the latest position is less than a day old, and I can take up a dead reckoning position, track from there to the nearest en route port that I wanted to go to. Primarily I'm using electronic charting. I've got the Raymarine, I've got the CMAP subscription on that. And because Navionics is quite cheap on the iPad, that is my backup electronic charting. For about $70 US, I think you can have quite a section of the world. Remember though, I've heard of this happening before. Some novice navigator has bought the Navionics subscription on their iPad and then just headed off, not realizing you got to download the areas that you want. Have a look here, and I can show you that this darkened area is not downloaded. There is no detail under here. Well, there is actually, but it's a base map. This brightened area is downloaded, so we have good detail. That's how it be. So make sure, and it takes quite a long time. It could take a few hours to download the charts, other than just the app. Now the iPad, although it says it has GPS, doesn't really. It uses the mobile network to really ascertain its position. So you need a dedicated GPS. That I think it has one in there, but it's really quite useless. So I bought this for $100 US. I bought this little Garmin GPS unit, and through Bluetooth it connects to the iPad and is very precise. It's good actually, and I keep this inside out of the weather, and it can still pick up enough GPS signals. Okay, so for electronic charting I've got the CMAP, the Navionics, and as a backup to those I've got the OpenCPN on the Windows computer, and it's running old CMAP charts from 2009. It can also run raster charts as well, so that's actual copies of paper charts that we can put on this program. And of course, this means I have redundancy. The main GPS is in this Raymarine. Here's another GPS. I have the old plotter still working, has a GPS. My computer has a plug-in GPS, and the AIS has its own GPS. So it's pretty important to have redundancy, at least 3 GPSs on board. All right, what about communications? For short-range communication, the VHF is here, and it's accessible and listenable from the helm, which is really handy. This is a special unit where the head is in my hand. which is always great. The actual radio is called a black box. This is an ICOM black box unit. The black box is up near the antenna, but this is the head, which is right at the helm station. It sucks if you have to leave the helm to go downstairs to answer a call, that ship coming at you. You can't, you need to be able to see and speak at the same time. Let's have a look at the HF. Okay, so on an ocean passage, you are a long distance from anywhere. May be considered a little old-fashioned, but a HF radio is a great backup communication device, and some people still primary communication device or to get weather. There's various stations around the world which broadcast weather on HF. Can be a little hard work understanding it, writing it down, because it's given to you in Latin long form. So then later you got to work out, oh, it's got nothing to do with me, and to get your section of weather can be difficult that way. If you put a Pacta modem paired with the HF radio, you can get basically downloadable weather, like GRIB files. So that's what HF can be used for. It's also a great way of keeping in touch with other friends who are out in the middle of the ocean at the same time. Our main form of communicating is through the Iridium Go. So this unit, including the external antenna, which is really important because this little antenna here is not very effective. You need the external antenna for a strong signal. We use this with a Predictwind subscription, and we get weather twice a day. Predictwind updates its weather twice a day, and we download it twice a day. Now, depending how big an area you're requesting, you use the laptop to request it, and it can take up to an hour sometimes to download, and it'll disconnect and reconnect 10 times maybe in that hour. There's one Predictwind subscription that is unlimited data. Now that sounds great, except the speed is apparently, they say, 10 times slower than dial-up network speeds. So it's really slow. I think it's about 2.4K off the top of my head. So it takes a long time to get any data. There are cheaper packages that Predictwind offer, but I think the lowest one is 5 minutes of data. I'm telling you, it takes nearly an hour to get one forecast. So, and that's probably a 7-day forecast over half an ocean, so you really need the unlimited data package. And for that, it's about $140 US per month. The trick is to buy multiple SIM cards. So inside here is a SIM card, and you can activate that SIM just before you start your ocean passage. Make sure everything's working before you leave. Get some download, get some Predictwind, get some weather forecasts via satellite. Make sure it works. When you get to the other side of get to the end of your passage, you can get online and cancel your SIM. You probably only paid 1 month for that service of having weather at your fingertips like that. It also includes, I think it's 150 minutes of talk time. You can call your mum.
Happy Mother's Day, Ma!
Now I gotta call mine. I think it's unlimited SMS. So yeah, it's a bit expensive, but if you cancel that SIM as soon as you're not using it, and you've got more SIMs sitting there waiting, they're only $10 each SIM. So just have a bunch of SIMs waiting for your next passage. But the Iridium is our primary communications, and it also gives us our weather. We need redundancy for our communications. We've got the VHF at the cockpit there. This unit's not only HF, it's UHF and VHF and HF. So all I need to do is change the plug, the antenna plug on the back of the radio, and I can use that as a VHF. And also have the handheld VHF, which comes with us in the life raft. The Iridium Go is our primary long distance communication and email and weather service. The backup to that is the HF, where I can get weather. I can even get a phone patch through a ham radio operator. This radio is actually a ham radio, not just a marine HF. So that's the key to nav and communication, is to have backup, to have redundancy. Cool. There's some other equipment with regard to navigation and communication, which is pretty important. One of them, AIS, in fact in some countries is a legal requirement. Every boat, a sailing boat must have AIS. In Singapore and Thailand, off the top of my head, require AIS. And as the world becomes more and more regulated, the requirement will spread. From a cruising point of view, it's actually a fantastic safety device, especially for short cruise sailing. We can set alarms on the AIS to warn us if there's any traffic approaching. Now, of course, not every boat has AIS out on the oceans, but the big hard ones generally do. How about radar? Now, out on the ocean, once again, with short crew, radar is a fantastic warning device. I recommend radar, but it's not critical. It is a great safety device when making a crossing. Especially the modern radars are very low power consumption. And when you're a bit sleepy, I set the radar alarms, the guard zones on the Ray Marine equipment. And any reflection that comes in there, and I'm not talking about just weather, although that is a great one. If there's a bit of a squall or a rain shower ahead and you cannot see it at night time, that's what the radar's for. Not only that, but also if there's a consistent reflection out there, it might be another vessel. So both AIS and radar I would recommend, but it's up to your budget. Okay, I think that just about wraps up our navigation and communication. Finally stopped raining. Whew. Weather services. On passage, you need to get updated weather at least daily. Worst case, every couple of days. You need fresh weather. Now, I've already talked about this a little bit in the navigation communication chapter, but I just want to talk about specifically getting weather. There's a couple of options these days. The old-fashioned way of using the HF radio, you can listen to weather broadcasts, but there's less and less of that around these days, unless you're just in a specific area. Like in the Caribbean, they still have HF broadcasts on weather in the Caribbean, but doing an ocean crossing, there's less and less of that. A better option is to connect a Pactor modem to your HF radio and then subscribe to a service which sends you an email with grid files for the area that you're in. This is quite a usable scenario, but it still relies on HF radio wave propagation, and that's so dependent on sunspot activity and weather in the area. There is another option, and that is a paid weather router. And that's a guy or a gal sitting at a computer. He may be a meteorologist or just an experienced sailor and expert on the weather, and they will give you advice on where to reroute and give you the current weather conditions to be expected. We've chosen to go with the Iridium Go Predictwind combination. Not cheap, but very reliable. As I mentioned in another chapter, you're going to need the unlimited data package because the data speeds are incredibly slow. And twice a day we download Predictwind weather, and it can take between 30 minutes and 1 hour to download a forecast. I choose Predictwind because it offers 4 models, 4 weather forecasting models. It offers the American, the NOAA model, the GFS, and it offers the European model. Plus Predictwind has 2 models of its own. So it's really nice to be able to compare each of the 4 models. And if there is a definite predominant pattern, I'd choose that one. So when you're underway and making a long crossing, you have to be prepared to reroute for better weather conditions. Whether it's a low pressure system coming at you, you want to deviate away from, or take advantage of some stronger winds from behind in a different direction. So the shortest route from A to B may be straight line, but it's not the quickest route. You want to keep that wind, otherwise you're not moving very fast. So in summary, you need to get your weather somehow, and remember it's only a forecast, and be ready for some surprises because they're not always right. Yes, I know, we only got 2 more topics covered. We have worked out that it's going to take another 2 videos to finish the list. I'm sorry about this, but there's so many important things to discuss. I don't want to leave anything out. So we'll see you next week for part 3 of preparing for an ocean crossing. Remember, like, subscribe and share. Cheers.